Welcome to the Great Ideas Podcast, where we explore many topics, including leadership, teamwork, relationships, politics, economics, pop culture, health, sports, food, and anything else that's a great idea. I'm your host, Barry Moline. Today, we're talking with lobbyist and political maven, Michael Nolan. Michael and I examine the early months of President Trump's second term. We discuss the administration's legislative victories, including the sweeping One Big Beautiful Bill, which extends Trump's first-term tax cuts while slashing Medicaid, SNAP, or food stamps, and clean energy subsidies. We talk about the challenges of unified Republican government, Trump's controversial moves on tariffs, immigration, FEMA's future, and the fallout from the Epstein files controversy. Michael provides insight into legislative maneuvering, partisan tensions, and the political stakes heading into the 2026 midterms. Let's get into it. Michael Nolan, it is great to see you.
Thanks, Barry. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're talking politics here on the Great Ideas Podcast. And first up is Donald Trump. How is the Trump presidency going here in August of 2025?
Well, you don't mince words. We get right into it, don't we, Barry? Spoken like a true Californian. Here I am on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., your nation's capital. Frankly, I'm lucky that and really glad that August is upon us, because typically it means congressional recess. And not to sound too snarky, but I think we're better off these days when Congress is out of town. All right, that's a little joke, but the House is gone, the Senate gone or about to be gone, and that's fine. They need the August recess. Everybody in this town needs a break from Congress. They have been working hard. I know a lot of people don't think they work hard, but Congress actually, the House left a week early. Well, a week earlier than the Senate. And a couple of days earlier, because Speaker Mike Johnson from Louisiana got himself into a pickle over Jeffrey Epstein. And he would rather adjourn the House for an early August recess than vote to release Jeffrey Epstein file. So that's how I'm doing. And that's how Washington, D.C. is doing here in the early days of August.
Well, how's the Trump presidency? Is there a way to give them a report card on
6 months
a few
in
things? Yeah.
And it's only been 6 months, January 20th. And here we are. We just passed July 20th, or early days of August. And Congress, by the way, will come back right after Labor Day, which is very early this year. And September will be a bear. And we can talk about that if you want. September will be crazy. I know we always say that it's crazy around Washington, but September is not going to be a fun month in this town. Here's the president's report card. Believe it or not, he is doing well, and he would say he's doing very well. He has a very compliant Congress. Remember, this is what we call a unified government, when one party, the Republicans in this instance, control the White House, the House, and the Senate by slim margins, very slim margins in both the House and the Senate. But a compliant Congress does what he wants them to do. And that is an unbelievable factor in dealing with legislation and policy. This is a guy who doesn't really care about legislation or policy. In fact, as a general rule, we know he doesn't like Congress because he doesn't understand Congress. And Congress is an obstacle to him and his issues and his vision, whatever that may be. Tariffs notwithstanding, Congress always took a lead in tariff or a role in playing tariffs. That's not true now. Congress takes a lead in appropriations, and that's not true. That's what rescissions are all about, by the way. Let's be clear about that. There was a real instance of legislative madness in the last couple of weeks when a rescissions package, small package in this town, $9 billion, went to the Senate, and they struggled with it. What is a rescission? It's when Congress takes back the money that they have previously appropriated or want to spend on certain programs and agencies and departments. Why is that a big deal? It's perfectly legal when Congress does it. But in this instance, the White House wants to do it. They want to rescind, take back some congressional money on programs. That $9 billion, most of it, $8 billion, was all the USAID money, foreign assistance. But the $1 billion, this is why people call it the NPR bill or the PBS bill. That was for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And what happened? Totally eliminated the federal funding for Corporation Public Broadcasting, NPR, PBS. That was part of the rescissions. And this makes Congress nervous to rescind their own money. Doesn't make the House nervous. The Senate threw a little hissy fit before they passed the bill. And that's how compliant Congress is these days. Rescission's legal. Impoundment is when the White House wants to go after congressional money. That's illegal. And Richard Nixon taught us that years ago. The Supreme Court said it's illegal. But the president has no problem going after Congress and rescinding. And by the way, you will see more of that. I believe that little bill of $9 billion was a test case. And let's just run it up the flagpole and see how people salute. And it worked with a little problem, but it worked. And I think you're going to see more rescission packages coming or emanating from the White House up to the Hill. I think that's coming.
So on a few issues, let's, thumbs up, thumbs down on how Trump is doing. The big one is tariffs. He's gotten into these big tariff wars, negotiations, and
I think
how's that turning?
Thumbs up from critics and supporters alike. Thumbs up. The New York Times recently said thumbs up on tariffs. The sky is not falling. So somehow he is making it work. Let's back up very quickly. I'm fond of saying the president is many things. Donald Trump is many things, but I think he's two things in particular in public political life. One, he is transactional. Everything to him is a transaction. This is the art of the deal. He's a great negotiator, etc. He's transactional. And number two, he's personal. Everything is personal to him. So keep those two things in mind with whatever he does. Tariffs, it's a transaction. Oh, we've sent out letters. Oh, we got 17 letters. That's a deal. That's not a deal. That's not an agreement. That's why he not only played golf at his new golf course in Turnberry in Scotland, but he made a new deal with the EU, struck a new deal. That's not in writing yet. We don't know how the details aren't going to spend $750 billion when they buy U.S. energy resources. That means LNG. We export, or world's exporter of LNG, which is controversial in and of itself. But this is not in writing yet. Thumbs up on tariffs. Somehow it's working the way he thought it would work, regardless of the Fed, because the Fed doesn't think it's working, which is why they have a big calamity between the White House and the Fed. So thumbs up on that.
What I question on tariffs is that we haven't seen the impacts yet.
Haven't seen it. It's early.
Who pays tariffs? We do. Consumers pay tariffs. Right. And the president says that the countries that have higher prices imposed on them.
He's the only guy who doesn't seem to understand that.
Yeah,
the only guy in the room.
He's trying to make it part of the ether. Nevertheless, the impacts haven't really occurred. We're seeing some of the car companies, Ford, GM, saying they're going to be negative impacts, and I see them as somewhat inflationary. Now, on a long-term perspective,
that, right?
Yeah,
even GM, they admitted that.
But from the long-term perspective, it does make sense if other countries are not buying our products, we have similar products, they're not buying our cars. Yes, we want the playing field to be leveled or bring manufacturing back. I totally get that philosophy if it's been offshored because labor is so much cheaper. So we're trying to raise the cost of those other countries. We're not going after cheap labor anymore. The rising tide is going to raise all costs. Bottom line. And in the long run, we may bring back manufacturing to the U.S., and I have fingers crossed on that. Still, it's going to be done at a higher price. The point is, I'm not really sure what the end game is on that. So it's definitely a move against globalization and toward trying to bring some jobs back to the U.S. So that's the long-term view. The short-term view is definitely higher prices, and we haven't seen those really imposed yet.
jury's still out on that.
Yeah.
It's happening a little bit. Look, the August 1 deadline, April 2nd was Liberation Day, and deadline after deadline. Deadlines come and go in this White House. That's why the famous moniker taco. Trump always chickens out. Well, August 1 is the deadline. It's a hard deadline. The other day, is that hard and fast? Yes, it's hard. It's a firm deadline. Well, how firm? Yeah. Well, not 100% firm, but it's a firm deadline. Okay. August 1st deadline comes and goes and it's easy for him to say, you know what? We need another pause, another 90 days out there. Let's see how it works out. Okay. His prerogative. Congress doesn't act here. They don't have a role to play, they say. But that's right. So the jury's out. On manufacturing, there are a lot of opponents still that never think U.S. manufacturing is coming back to that degree. But look at Indiana. Honda recently announced we're going to pull back on some of our manufacturing in Mexico and put them in the plant in Indiana. That's a good thing for Indiana. And the Indiana senator the other day was extolling Honda's news. So that, to a degree, is working. Thumbs up. You could argue and continue to argue about tariffs, but I just think this guy is so transactional and so personal. He loves the game. Disruption is good. Chaos is good. Not if you're Canada, but to this guy, keeps them on their toes. He likes playing offense. He likes to have you backed into a corner. And that's part of the game. And he does it, frankly, very well.
So immigration. Thoughts on immigration? And we're not going to get into all the details of immigration, but generally, is it a thumbs up, thumbs down?
Again, it's early. Jury's still out. By the way, numbers are tanking. We don't talk a lot about this. Maybe in a different administration, if you were polling at 40%, you would be in big trouble. Guess what? Donald Trump is polling at 40%. On the tax front, 44% recent numbers just last week. On immigration, 42%. He's underwater everywhere. On the economy overall, 40%. Are we on the right track or the wrong track? Well, we're on the wrong track by 50, 57, 59. We're on the wrong track. This is unbelievable. Everybody would be talking about these numbers if it was anybody else, but he's not, and we're not. On the tariffs alone, he just recently polled 39% in favor. How are you handling tariffs? 39% approve. These are crazy numbers.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that in a second. H.R. 1 is the big, massive legislative package, 940 pages, known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. But H.R. 1 just passed. He signed it on July 4th. Those numbers are in the toilet. Those numbers are in the tank. That bill does not poll well at all.
So on immigration, the philosophy generally is you got to do something on immigration.
Absolutely.
As Trump says, if you don't have borders, you don't have a country. And so there's no question that more action needed to be taken, more restrictions need to be imposed beyond what President Biden did.
Clearly not happening, right? Clearly not working under the Biden administration.
Yeah. There's a way to do enforcement that is a lot more, let's say, fair and balanced than what Trump is doing. There's a general punishment philosophy going on here. And that, I imagine, is taking what should be a positive issue for him and turning it negative. It's the way they're going about it. And I don't know, they just clearly, if you're in this country without papers, you are officially, illegal. However, a lot of people that are here have applied for asylum. So the habeas corpus issue is you're entitled to a hearing. So what's happening is that they're just picking these people up and deporting them and not giving them that hearing, even though there's a backlog and not enough judges for those hearings. So we're violating those rights, which is
I would say,
unfortunate.
Barry, those, with all due respect, I would say, as a just observer of these, those are mere details. And those details have gotten lost. And these are the trees in the forest, and you got to keep your eyes on the ball, meaning the forest. So how's it going? Hey, we're doing really well. The border's never been more secure. We're not letting anybody in. Well, habeas corpus, we don't care about that. We're arresting the wrong people. We don't care about that. The border's never been more secure, and we are doing well. That's $150 billion alone on immigration and border security is how H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill, started in the first place. let's do three major parts. Border security, $150 billion. More for the border? Okay, yes, more. Defense. Let's give the Pentagon $175 billion more. They didn't ask for it, but let's give it to them.
Do you know why that is?
Energy.
So energy, but still, over to defense. Why are we spending more on defense? I just don't understand that.
It's going to be the first $1 trillion budget the Pentagon's ever seen. I remember the days of Ronald Reagan when it hit $300 billion and we all freaked out in Washington to have a $300 billion Pentagon budget. It's unbelievable.
But why?
Because he loves it. He loves the military. He loves the Pentagon and wants to give more money for more everything. By the way, nobody's really talking about it, but he wants to build ships again. We don't make ships anymore. We don't make Navy ships. We don't make anything anymore. Less than 1% of all the vessels that we make. But he wants to make United States of America be a major shipbuilding country.
So
again.
it's just because he kind of likes defense. It would seem as though if you're going to cut across the board.
Transactional and personal.
If you're going to cut, just cut across the board, and that should be sufficient. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I think actually he could win over more moderates if
we don't like
was getting cut like others.
Wind? Well, it's killing whales. Why doesn't he like wind? Because he can see windmills. Talk to the Netherlands. Windmills, turbines, wind turbines. He can see them from Turnberry, his golf course. I don't like how they look. I can see them. They disrupt the view. Right? They kill birds. They kill whales. Okay. Solar. They take way too much land. They're ugly on the landscape. I don't like solar. Let's knock off solar. And that became the major energy component of H.R. 1, the budget reconciliation bill.
All right. So let's talk about H.R. 1, the one big, beautiful bill.
You got to say it's a major victory. It's the single largest legislative package this Congress has done and may do in the next 2 years. It may be it. There may be no other bill like this, though, according to the Speaker, Mike Johnson, there may be another reconciliation bill coming. All right, let's back up and talk about budget reconciliation for a quick second. What is it? It's a legislative tool in the legislative toolbox for Congress. Came out of the early 70s, the Budget Control Act. It rejiggered the rules, especially in the Senate, but in the House too. There are several rules that apply to budget reconciliation legislative packages. What are they? Two primary rules. One, it's got to be related strictly to budget, debt, deficit, and taxes. Those four main ingredients. So you can't do U.S. foreign policy. You can't do Voting Rights Act. You can't do clean energy on its face. You got to relate it somehow to the budget, the deficit, the debt, and taxes, which is why it's kind of interesting that we run our major policy, healthcare, energy, through the U.S. tax code now. We've been doing this for a few decades. That's rule number one. Rule number two is it makes the filibuster go away. What do we mean? There's no cloture, there's no filibuster, and the magic number of 60 votes in the Senate disappears to become only simple majority, 50 plus 1. That's incredible because it means you can't filibuster. You can't be a major obstacle to this. It's got to be germane. The parliamentarian in the Senate determines what's germane according to the first rule, budget, debt, deficit. And she was very busy. Her name's Elizabeth McDonough. She was very busy and kicked out a lot of Republican proposals. But no cloture, no filibuster, no 60 magic votes. 51 is needed. And when you have 53 in a Republican-controlled Senate, you are going to win. We've done this before. Democrats do it too. This is how we pass major legislation, let alone tax packages. The old Trump Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the single largest legislative achievement in term number one, was done through budget reconciliation. So you have the votes. This means politically, Democrats aren't in the room. They don't develop it. They don't write it. They don't draft it. They're not in the part of the discussions. They're not needed at all as long as you keep your teams together. In the House, slim majority for the Republicans. You can only afford to lose. It's a margin of about 7 or 8. Cut that in half, though. You can only afford to lose 3 or 4 votes. Well, guess what? They lost 3 or 4 votes. And that House budget reconciliation package, dubbed H.R. 1, passed by 1 vote in the House. And in the Senate, slim majority, 53-47, 53 Republicans, 47 Democrats, including the independents. You can only afford to lose 3 Republican senators on a battle like this. How many did they lose? They lost 3. Rand Paul would never vote for it. Susan Collins of Maine didn't vote for it. Tom Tillis of North Carolina didn't vote for it. And that's 3. Well, that means it's 50-50. But when you control the White House and the party controls the White House, again, unified government, J.D. Vance comes to Capitol Hill to cast the tying vote. So it passes by 1 vote in the House and 1 vote in the Senate. You win. And the very next day, July 4th, the man, to his credit, to everyone's credit, they met their self-imposed deadline, and they met it. John Thune was going crazy in the Senate. He's the majority leader from South Dakota. They met the deadline, and the president signed the bill into law. This is a bill that no one read. They made it up as they went along. It took months and months this year in Congress. Again, it's 940 pages. We're still finding out what's in it. Members of the House and Senate barely know what's in it. Again, we're still finding it out. We'll find this out for weeks and months to come. How does it play? Republicans need to find a way to sell it at home, and Democrats need to find a way to oppose that bill and sell their story that the sky is falling. The Medicaid cuts alone, there've never been these actions before. All budget reconciliation, this bill, H.R. 1, is about one thing: extend and make permanent the Trump tax cuts. That's all. That's the mission here. That was priority number 1. There was no priority number 2. It was all about extending and making permanent the Trump tax cuts, which expire this year. That's why it's a tax year. That's why we're doing this. That's why it's budget reconciliation time. So how do you get the money to pay for that? That's the trick. Where do you get the money? Good luck with that. And where do they get it? They cut $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there. Medicaid cuts, massive. SNAP cuts, food assistance, massive. All of that from one side of the ledger moves to the other side so you can pay for the extension of the tax cuts. And that's a nasty business. That was really crazy up here.
So all that will get turned into politics and political messages at the midterms, because it's going to have...
If not now, during August recess. When people are home, they're going to hear about it. And that's what I mean. You got to figure out your messages. It's all about messaging now. But you're right. The Democrats, in a word, think this is a horrible message with a horrible bill, and we're going to retake the House because of this bill. Okay, fine. But 15 months is a long time from now in political life. And the Senate, is that in play? Well, Tom Tillis, I mentioned, never voted for the bill. He didn't want to vote for the bill. He was a Republican from North Carolina in the Senate, did not like how it was going, did not like his Republican colleagues and how they were treating, for example, those clean energy tax credits and from the Biden administration. He wanted to protect some of those. He wanted to moderate or soften the blow a little bit for North Carolina, among other things, including the Medicaid cut. Look, Josh Hawley, a senator from Missouri, hated the Medicaid cuts, said time and again, we are not going to do this. We're not going to do this. I'm never going to vote for it. I'm never going to vote. And of course, he votes for the bill. Turns out he doesn't like it, but he voted for the bill. The bill passes and now public law. So a week later, he drops in a new bill to withdraw those Medicaid cuts. So is that the new way in Washington legislation? That is crazy. You vote for the package here, and a week later, you try to institute a new piece of legislation that would soften that blow.
I voted for it before I voted against it.
Absolutely. Tom Tillis handled it differently. I'm not going to vote for it. And it turned out he didn't vote for it. And the president took it personally, went after him personally. And the next day, Tom Tillis, the U.S. Senator from North Carolina, said, I quit.
Yeah.
And he quit. He's announced his retirement and he's not running. Why does this matter 15 months from now in the midterms when he's up for re-election? Because that is called an open seat. And maybe the Democrats win that open seat with a guy named Roy Cooper, the former governor of North Carolina, and the Republicans lose a seat and the Democrats get to flip a seat in the U.S. Senate. That's why things matter. And that's the climate we're in every single day. Actions have consequences. And that's what August recess is all about. And we'll see the results 15 months from now.
So what are some of the other impacts on energy?
Let's talk about energy. This is a big deal. I mentioned H.R. 1, the budget reconciliation package, was about border security, more money to the Pentagon, defense, and energy. What did energy mean? Since it's budget reconciliation and you have to deal with budget and the taxes and deficit and debt, there's not a lot of money that the government can take in from the energy world, except when it comes to leases. Leases on federal land, lease on private lands. This is oil and gas. Think oil and gas, think pipelines, not even transmission. But there is some money available that the government takes in from oil leases. Okay, that's issue number one. But here it became very political. If your name is Joe Biden, we're going to wipe it clean. Whatever Biden put his name on, this new administration is going to get rid of it. And Joe Biden looked to transform almost overnight a sea change in the energy industry through the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was a multi-tiered, multi-titled bill. And one title in there, one of the largest titles of that bill, was the energy title. And what did energy do? For the first time ever, it gave tax credits, for clean energy transition and transformation, free money, tax credits to build clean energy resources around the country. To whom? Almost anybody. Everybody, private industry got it, citizens got it, and all the utilities, private investor-owned utilities, rural electric co-ops, and municipal electric utilities, public power utilities, for the first time ever, are on a level plane where they, for the first time through the tax code, enjoy the same benefits, energy tax credits. To do what? Clean energy. What's that mean? Almost anything you can think of. Wind, solar, geothermal, battery storage, CCS, carbon capture, sequestration, hydropower and hydrokinetic, hydrogen back then. This just happened a few years ago under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
New sheriff in town, we're going after them. Those tax credits are not going to survive the Trump administration. This is priority number one for the energy community in the White House to get rid of them up in Congress in the bill. And guess what? It's exactly what happened. For the most part, all those energy tax credits go away in the bill. There are three ways to do it. You can outright repeal them, and that happened to a degree. You can phase them out. That's happening. They tighten the calendar on the phase out. Or you can place more restrictions on eligibility and the calendar and how you use. All three of those are ways to get rid of those clean energy tax credits under the Biden administration. So in a new Trump administration, in a Trump White House, we don't like them. We're going to get rid of them. A couple of carve-outs there. Hydropower is one. Geothermal is a carve-out. And nuclear. Nuclear saved. Batteries are, storage is a little, hydrokinetic actually got a reprieve. But for the most part, those clean energy tax credits disappear now with H.R. 1, the passage of this massive legislative package in the Hill. They go away. Some slowly, some very quickly. You got to have a project in by the end of this year or within 1 year of July 4th. So by July 4th, you better have started your construction in order to be eligible for the tax credit. But this is a sea change. It is a fundamental transformation of the energy community all over again that we just went through a few years ago. The pendulum swings, and boy, does it swing fast and mighty. So what we just did a little while ago is all changed. Now, they were difficult to use. Frankly, they were complicated and sometimes convoluted for the utility industry to try to break in and use these tax credits. Treasury is in charge of all the federal regulations. IRS, because of the tax code, is in charge of those regulations. We were still waiting for final regs on some of these things. But the fact of the matter is, for the most part, those disappear. And that was a tough fight. That was a tough fight. Even Republicans. By the way, let me just tell you this on the energy tax front. What are we talking about? We're talking about, in essence, recent numbers, 800 projects, mostly wind and solar, some battery storage, 800 projects in the industry ready to come online in the next year or so. That represents 400,000 jobs across the country. A lot, that's billions of dollars worth in energy, clean energy. And 2/3 of all those tax credits, 2/3 of all those projects, they're in red districts and they're in red states. So even Republicans had a little problem saying, wait a minute, let's slow this party down a little bit. Let's rethink what we're doing. So you had some debates over legislative language and the phase outs that I mentioned and the new restrictions on these or outright repeal. Sometimes they were saved, but I'm telling you, wind and solar largely gone. A lot of these things gone. You want an electric vehicle? Well, you had a tax credit for even a used electric, gone. You want to get a $7,500 tax credit to buy a new electric vehicle? Gone. Better go out soon and buy that car now because it's ending by the end of this calendar year.
So LIHEAP, the low income, I like to call it the Heating Energy Assistance Program.
Low income home energy assistance program.
Okay.
Got it. It's 40 years old. It's a great federal program. It's bipartisan.
Yeah.
It means Congress gives federal funding to low income customers to help pay their electric bills, period. Now, in the old days, this started as mostly a Northeast thing, New England, and the Northeast because of cold winters, Minnesota and Midwest. Today, LIHEAP serves customers 24/7, 365 all over the country. Yeah. All over the country. 50 states receive LIHEAP funds. And it's not political. It is federal funds that go immediately through a small federal office here in Washington, the LIHEAP office, and they immediately dole out to 50 state capitals LIHEAP funding. Here's the rub. Again, not partisan, not political. This White House thinks LIHEAP became political. They think LIHEAP is political. Why? It goes to those blue states. It goes to New York. It goes to New England. It goes to California. No, 365, 50 states, red everywhere. And blue, doesn't matter. It's everywhere, and everyone now relies on it. Full funding by Congress over the years now means $4.2 billion in full fundings. It sounds like a lot of money to you and me, but to do that job, it's always oversubscribed, meaning it's fully utilized. The president proposes a budget every year. Congress disposes, meaning they're in charge of the final budget. In this year's presidential White House budget, he proposed to eliminate LIHEAP completely. He zeroed it out in the budget, and he took an extra step. The White House, in charge of the executive branch, they are in charge of federal workers. He fired the federal LIHEAP office here in Washington. That's about 20 to 25 employees. They're gone. Administrative leave notwithstanding, they're gone. And you zero out the budget. Congress has said, wait a minute, this is a little too much even for us. It's bipartisan. Every year we seem to do LIHEAP letters asking for full funding. I understand right now Congress intends to fully fund that program. The Senate has already taken a step in their appropriations process at $4 billion. The House has to do the same in their appropriate spending bills. Maybe there's a meeting of the minds. I think will remain bipartisan. Don't know what to do about a federal LIHEAP office that's already been eliminated. Maybe you bring them back. Maybe you just give all the money to states somehow. That's another mechanism. But this is a nasty business. And on LIHEAP alone, it's not political. But again, transactional and personal. And that's the problem. I think LIHEAP survives to at least see another day.
Okay, well, that's good. FEMA. President Trump has proposed getting rid of FEMA. And I will say this about FEMA, with my experience in emergency management, is that FEMA has acted a lot as a checkbook. When there's an emergency, there are certain rules, and you can apply for FEMA funds. They reimburse after disasters. But for the most part, they don't provide direct assistance during an emergency. However, there are some general activities and actions that FEMA will take during an emergency. And the value in having a FEMA is that you have the FEMA brain. They know emergency management. States have their own departments of emergency management, but right. They don't have the hive mentality that exists at FEMA. Everybody tries to coordinate. So a small FEMA with a big checkbook is still a good thing. And then FEMA doles out the money to states depending on the level of the disaster. So that's typically what happens. I know that the president has proposed just giving the states a block grant related to disaster management, which would be hard to figure out because disasters happen in different ways in different places at different times. And a state could have a lot of money in one year and then no money in another year and not matching up with its natural disasters.
This is very weird to me and very frustrating. And I do a lot of FEMA work on Capitol Hill. Here's the problem with the White House. FEMA is a beleaguered federal agency. It is in deep trouble. New sheriff in town, Donald Trump, comes to Pennsylvania Avenue and wants to eliminate the agency. It's under the tutelage, it's under the jurisdiction and authority of DHS, Department of Homeland Security. That's Secretary Kristi Noem, the former governor of South Dakota, she wants to eliminate the agency. This is a problem for any FEMA watcher or FEMA supporter. Why is this so? He thinks it's political. He thinks because of what they did in North Carolina when they were on the campaign trail after the ravaging, disastrous flooding of North Carolina, what those people went through, FEMA is so important to them. He knows that a couple of FEMA workers did not knock on doors to check, working for FEMA, did not knock on doors that carried Trump signs on their yard, on their property. This is an old story. It's not debunked. It happened in some instances, but he rails against this. Therefore, the whole agency is political. Therefore, we have to eliminate the whole thing. This is crazy on Capitol Hill. We have Republicans who, on both sides, House and Senate, who have said over the top, we are not going to eliminate FEMA, not this year, but it's going to look a lot different. A lot different. I understand that. You said small agency with big dollars behind it. Even Republican senators, even from Florida, Republican senators say, we want the backing of the federal government. We need the backing of the federal government. Garrett Graves was a Republican congressman in the House from Louisiana. He would make actually a great FEMA administrator, by the way. We're on our second acting administrator of FEMA with no emergency management experience whatsoever, and it shows. He was on the Hill recently talking about the agency. Garrett Graves used to say, nobody understands FEMA, and therefore people don't like FEMA and they don't understand it until disaster strikes in their district. And the moment disaster strikes in their district, they ask all the questions. They love FEMA. They want FEMA to come. FEMA does certain things well. Doling out federal reimbursements is not one of them. What used to take months now takes years. FEMA is horribly bureaucratic. It's a massive undertaking. FEMA doesn't work. So I, for one, would like to burn it down and start over, but not eliminate it. So the White House has started the president put out early on an executive order. It was very ambiguous. It was poorly done, maybe on purpose, poorly written. An executive order that ultimately led to a thing called the FEMA Review Council. And it was supposed to bring in 19 people from beyond Congress, outsiders, stakeholders from all over. Florida has 3 members on it. California, Texas has somebody representing. They're from all over, who are supposed to, in 180 days, make a report to determine the value of FEMA and the life of FEMA. The end of FEMA. I think events have overtaken that process. What happened in Texas is absolutely horrible. And the president goes, and you're not going to eliminate FEMA when you go down to the tragedy in Texas. So you're going to come back and you're going to rework that project, that mission statement. And I think the White House is into rebranding FEMA. It may mean a renaming of FEMA, but FEMA doesn't go away. And you got to keep the federal dollars there. Here's the second point. Congress has a role to play. They know it. They're not shirking their responsibility. Watch the House. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, led by a Missouri guy by the name of Sam Graves, very active on FEMA, a big supporter of FEMA. He has quite a legislative package that will dramatically, if successful, reform FEMA. There's a lot of good in that package. It was just introduced before they went on August break. That's a fall project. I look forward to working with them in the fall on FEMA. And I think Congress, they have to watch what the White House does. They have to follow the lead of the president. They don't want to get ahead of themselves, but watch what Sam Graves does in the House. There's a lot of good there to reform FEMA.
Interesting. Okay. We'll keep our eye on that. All right. So
make assistance great again. That's what we got to figure out, how to bring the president, make assistance great again.
All right. So as we wind down, we can't ignore the Epstein controversy, and obviously we don't want to get into any of the details.
It's been good talking to you, Barry. That's great. Thank you so much. We're breaking up here.
But let's talk about it in the context of the impact to, whatever's happening in the Trump presidency right now, but the impact also on the midterms, and then we can transition to talking about that.
MAGA's going crazy over Jeffrey Epstein. And the president, I've never seen the president of this White House mishandle something as this. And the more he talks, the worse it gets. And the old axiom is true. When you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. But he's his own worst enemy. Every time he opens his mouth, it gets worse. This is exactly why the House and Speaker Johnson left town early. They did not want to face a resolution on the floor, run by Republicans, as a matter of fact, and the Democrats would certainly vote for it and support it, to release, whatever this means, release the Epstein files. Well, there are no files. Well, let's release them. Okay, we're going to release some of them. But wait, you said there are none. No, they're all made up by the Democrats. Well, they didn't use them. Well, they're not going to use them. And now I don't know if I'm in them or not. This is a complete mess. And it is driving this town crazy. That resolution, by the way, little arcane inside baseball on the Hill, it's called the discharge petition. And it's fascinating. You need 218, that's a magic number in the House, it's simple majority, 218 signatures on a discharge petition. That just obviates the need for any other general order. You don't need a committee. You don't need the Rules Committee. You can go right to the floor with that. And that discharge petition, run by Republicans, will simply say, release the files. And nobody wants to face that. Speaker Mike Johnson doesn't want to face that, but he's going to face it if something doesn't happen. Now, Donald Trump's very good at obfuscation, very good at diversion, and very good at waiting it out. So I can't quite figure out the strategy here besides him keep talking about it because it gets worse. But when Congress gets back, he's going to face the fire on this. I think he cannot decide how he found himself in this trap, and he doesn't know which side he's on. The MAGA side for the people or the people of the elites, and I'm now suddenly in a position where I'm faced with protecting the elites who are in the Epstein files. Which crowd is my crowd? So that's a real problem right now. And I think I see no solution overnight. I see no simple solution. And it's a mess. It's I can't believe he keeps talking about it. And we're still finding things out that, from the dead guy, that this should have been this is years old, and we're still talking about it. Of all issues that have impacted this White House, this is it. It's crazy.
All right, so more to come on that. And then how does that impact the midterm elections along with the big, beautiful bill, impact on Medicaid?
Okay, I think, we've said a couple of things. 15 months is a long time, but August recess, be careful about August. This is how things fester. When your member goes home ostensibly to talk about how great the one big, beautiful bill is, that's not a good thing. You just cut drastically and dramatically Medicaid and SNAP food stamps to people. Everybody needs food assistance and everybody needs Medicaid. 50 states, it's all across the country, and you just drastically cut it. So you're going to hear about that during August. And you're going to hear about Jeffrey Epstein in August. You're going to face the fire. 15 months is a long time before the midterms. You're going to see a lot of retirements. They're happening now. They're going to more and more retirements will happen. That will be open seats. And the president knows this. The president knows this, and he's trying to cut him off at the pass by doing what? Ordering, asking, requesting, telling, demanding certain states, Texas, Ohio, Missouri, which is weird.
Get me more seats.
Get me more seats through through redistricting. Well, we don't really do redistricting except every 10 years based on the U.S. Census numbers at the end of the decade. No, I want mid-decade well, we don't really do mid-decade redistricting in Texas. Get me 5 seats. And he had a call a week ago with Texas Republicans in Austin, in the state capital. I think we can get 5 seats. Let's do it. Now, days later, the governor calls a special session. What's on the agenda? Among other things, the Texas floods, and it should be, and redistricting. And there are new Republican maps coming out that show how Republicans can redraw the maps. Be very careful. Redistricting is a nasty business. You're going to end up trying to get rid of some Democratic seats by pitting some Republicans. Maybe you dilute a district here or there, and you end up having some unintended consequences to the redistricting process. Democrats, Gavin Newsom, flat out, California's different, independent commission. So maybe the state constitution's different. Maybe their rules are different. But Gavin Newsom flat out said 2 can play at this game. So maybe you have Democratic governors saying, you want to mess around with Texas? We can mess around with my state, Maryland, Illinois. This is a total mess. Big piece of chaos on redistricting mid-decade. That's what we're talking about. All because the man knows in a tight margin in the House, let alone the Senate, that you want to win a couple of seats that you can.
Yeah.
I think midterms are by the end of this year. I want to say one more thing about that crazy September. The Democrats were kept out of the process because that's the way the process is written. It's perfectly legal. Budget reconciliation, they're not needed. Now you have a rescissions package, which is really interesting to Congress because you're telling them to vote to take back and withdraw their own funding. That's crazy. Democrats hate it. Republicans hate it, but they had to vote for it. Now it's appropriation season, and we're nearing the end of that. Those are 12 spending bills in the House and the Senate. They have to pass them. We don't pass these anymore. We don't pass a budget. We have to pass a continuing resolution. That continuing resolution, known as a CR, comes due on September 30th, the end of the government fiscal year. You need 60 votes for that. You need Democrats for that. And right now, no Democrat is willing to help any Republican on any issue, period.
So what happens?
Good luck with
shuts
that.
Down?
A shutdown is coming. So that if you don't get that, then the government shuts down. So you better, and appropriations and spending bill, they should be bipartisan all the time. And in the Senate, I could point out a couple of bipartisanship. Look at Susan Collins got a lot of money for Maine, and she should. She's the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. Happens all the time, and that's your job, and that's your right. But some Democrats are also bringing home the bacon for their own states. Maybe that will stem the tide a little bit. It's a nasty business. You have just a few legislative days in September to get your act together, or a government shutdown will happen. I don't see meeting of the minds. I don't see anyone making nice. Not yet. Not before September 30th. I do think a government shutdown is a complete possibility as we sit here today. And
so
that's depressing.
It's business as usual with a lot of extra spice and jalapenos on it.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you, Michael. It's hard to put your hands around this amoeba that we call the federal government and all the impacts. But
that's why we're looking forward to August.
I think you've done a great job.
We light. Yeah. That's a good thing.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for the insight.
Thanks for having me. Stay safe. We'll see you.
Thanks to Michael Nolan for being our guest today. And thank you for listening. If you want to get in touch, or if you have an interesting topic and know someone you think would be a great guest on the show, send me an email at barry@barrymoline.com. And please leave a 5-star review, which helps others find their way to the Great Ideas Podcast.